Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kinman Liu. I'm from Shell. So today I'm going to share with you about the impact of the up-and-coming emission regulations, which is BS6, which is a buzzword I think everybody has talked about this morning and also is going to be with us for quite a while. Next slide, maybe. Just definition and cautions from Shell. So if you want, you can read it at your leisure. Next slide. Next slide. Is the green? It doesn't. Okay, fine. Right. First, I'll just go through a very brief overview of the BS6 emission standards and eventually how it will affect OEMs, hardware improvement and changes. And eventually, how does it sort of trickle down to oil suppliers like us? And of course, the JASO T903 specification, which has been mentioned earlier, and what role does it play in the coming emission regulations? Okay, you have seen this slide earlier. I'd just like to point out that presently, 2018, a lot of the motorcycle markets are already on the Euro 4. Come 2020, India and Japan will be racing ahead of the pack to introduce Euro 5 or the BS6 emissions. So these, and followed by the introduction of OBD2 in 2023. And with OBD, that will really put a strong monitoring effect on how the bike performance, particularly also on the three-way catalytic converter. And Japan, where JASO sits, or JAMA, they will be monitoring, or they will be coming out with the new specification around 2021 that will definitely look into the effect of having OBD fitted in the bikes and how that new specification will shape up. Just a brief overview on the effect of the Class 2 emission, comparing the BS4, Euro 4, and BS6. So one can easily appreciate the severity of the BS6 emission. Over 82% reduction in the NOx, and more than 70% corresponding reduction in the hydrocarbon, and NOx. So these really demand significant hardware upgrades from the motorcycle. And that, in fact, will drive how the motorcycle oil will look like. There are several options from the technical perspective on what the hardware motorcycle OEMs will improve and push on. For example, changing in engine metallurgy, you're looking at lighter materials with hardening of surfaces or some special coating to reduce wear. And in terms of optimizing your combustion efficiency, definitely the electronic fuel injection will be coming in to replace the good old carburetor. And of course, optimizing your combustion chamber design and incorporating variable valve timing to enhance your combustion efficiency. And more importantly, having a very efficient combustion is not sufficient. You need effective after-treatment devices, such as your three-way catalytic converter, to capture and reduce all these exhaust emission to an acceptable level. And of course, you have to have some oxygen sensor to close the loop for your OBD as well. So from oil supplier side, we are basically concerned about emission, which we have to work very closely with the OEMs, hardware, engine, and oil durability as well, because we not only have to look into how you're going to preserve or protect the engine, also serving the customer needs of pushing for a longer ODI, oil drain interval, and also, more importantly, how this new formulation, this new oil, will work with the new catalytic converter that's being added in. And I think in BS6, you will have a mandatory requirements of ensuring the bike will last up to 35,000 kilometers. And that also means your CAT converter has to work that long as well. And of course, fuel economy, this is the thing that everybody is pushing. So we can't, among all these different requirements, fuel economy is certainly, you have to keep your eye on. And the engine lubricant has a role to play. So an overview of the JASO specification, just looking back, it started in 1998. And this year is the 20th anniversary of the JASO spec. It has come that far. And every 5 years, apart from the initial 8 years, JASO will revise its specification to keep in with times. So from 2006 to 2012, there hasn't been any big changes to the physical chemical properties required by listed in the JASO specifications, except in 2006, where they start to differentiate the friction performance of the oil. In the pre-2006, you only have a simple JASO MA and MB. But from 2006 onwards, they split the MA into MA1 and MA2, 2 being a higher friction oil. And I think this is sort of in line with the introduction of higher performance bike, more severe operating condition, where in certain bikes, you need a higher friction oil to cope with that. Come 2021, which going on past statistics every 6 years, 5-6 years revision, we're thinking whether will JASO make any control in terms of phosphorus, sulfur, and maybe even the volatility of the oil. The reason being that these phosphorus and sulfur components, they are present in the additive components, they are present in the base oil. That will more or less contribute to the poisoning of the three-way catalytic converter. And as a finished formulation, as a finished oil, the volatility of the lubricant will also affect the evaporation of the phosphorus. So these 3 major items, I'm sure, will be part of the JASO committee consideration. But before they come to that, I think one of the major challenges is that have they and are they able to determine what is the test to assess in case they decided to drop the phosphorus level. Phosphorus component is largely found in anti-wear additive. So they need to come out with a suitable, reliable test to assess that having a lower phosphorus sulfur content lubricant, does it still continue to protect the hardware? That sort of relates to the durability issues. From the oil perspective, I listed a few important ones. Three-way catalytic converter. Of course, most OEM would like to have as low phosphorus as you could to put into the engine lubricants. But that somehow contradicts the wear performance. So we had to seek a balance, whether will JASO reduce the current 0.08% or 0.12% to maybe even down to 0.08. And given now you have bikes which have port injection, better combustion, higher temperature is expected. And in some markets, in India, for example, the bikes are heavily loaded, temperature is going to go up. So, and coupled with long oil drain interval requirements, so the oil has to have a suitable amount of protection to itself so that you can last longer. And that means you have to have a proper selection of base oils. Better quality base oil, maybe going from mineral to part synthetic or full synthetic selections, and also the right selection of the additive dedicated for motorcycle applications. Friction, as I mentioned, since 2006, JASO has introduced a tiered friction performance, MA1, MA2, and MB. So we cannot, well, we're going along the line of having a more efficient fuel economy oil. We cannot compromise on the friction performance. Because when we talk about low energy efficient oil, means that it has to be more slippery in a sense. But for most of these wet clutch motorcycles, we can't allow that. We still have to maintain that proper fluid friction so that the clutch will function properly. And in terms of gear durability and protection, there are 2 issues here. One is relating to your high temp, high shear viscosity, meaning your oil film thickness. JASO at the moment does not allow the oil to go below 2.9, but passenger cars are now going down to even 2.6 or lower. So, and the other thing that protects the gear is your phosphorus anti-wear additive. So these are sort of the important issues to consider. And last but not least, fuel economy. Passenger car is going along the way of adding a lot of friction modifier. into the